This video is about God's purposes and our choice. God's purpose will always be carried out, but not necessarily the way that He commanded it first to be carried out. For instance, I was thinking about Israel and how God told Abraham that all nations would be blessed through him and through his descendants. And that was God's plan, and that was His purpose, and that is what's happened. But God first proposed in the first covenant to bless them with health and wealth beyond their wildest imaginings. I mean, they were to keep His commandments, and He would be their God and would prosper them beyond belief. And that worked for about a minute. In Solomon's time, when silver was as common in Israel as stones on the street, and the women were covered in ornaments and told to praise Solomon who made them so wealthy, and the Queen of Sheba came and saw Solomon's house and his temple and the servant's attire that served him and his wisdom, heard his wisdom, and there was no breath left in her. She was just breathless with it all, and praised God who had given Solomon all this wealth and this wisdom, and went back home to her own country just amazed. And that's what was supposed to happen. But Israel broke the covenant, and God gave them hundreds of years to stop, sent prophet after prophet whom they killed, most of them, and finally He said this covenant is done. I mean, even before He finally sent them into exile to Babylon, He promised them a new covenant, that instead of writing His law on tablets of stone, He would write His law on their hearts. He promised a new covenant, but that covenant, it's gone. The first covenant, this earthly paradise kingdom that would conquer all nations that came against it and be full of health and wealth, it's gone, obviously. And Jesus testified that His kingdom is not of this world. And that's why all of those ceremonial and civil laws in the Old Testament aren't kept. I mean, it was clearly said that that covenant was going to go and there would be a new covenant, because they broke the first covenant. And my point with this is that God had a purpose to bless all nations with a knowledge of Him through Israel, and He would have loved to have done that, and He planned and proposed to first do that through their exaltation as Queen of Nations. But they wouldn't do that. And so He did it through their punishment, through dispersing them throughout the nations, because as they were punished and as they lost everything, they returned to Him, and they kept His law, and they were a light in all the nations where He sent them out. And that made me think that God has a purpose. He has a purpose for us, and it will be done. It will be done by us. But how we do it is up to us. And He'll work with us. He has plan B. If we won't do plan A, if we choose plan B, He'll go with that. And that's what I was thinking about. God's will and our choice.